mostly arid environment, that the amount of water that the Congo pushes out, apparently it can push, I can't remember exactly, but it pushes fresh water up to 50 or 60 kilometers out to sea. Incredible. And if you fly apparently over it, you can see that the fresh water and the coloration being pushed out by all the major rivers, the Congo, the Nile, and the Ogowe. The one thing that is really, really fascinating about both the Congo and the Ogowe rivers, as opposed to the others, is those two are some of the largest rivers in the world that have no dams or man-made sort of impediments. So the Nile has a very large dam on it. It's named Lake Nasser, whereas the Congo and the Ogowe do not. Being a fisherman, I'm fascinated with all the fresh, and specifically any fishing, but I'm fascinated by the freshwater species in Africa, and there's some incredible species. The largest freshwater fish in Africa occurs in the Congo River, and a lot of people would think immediately it's the Goliath tigerfish, but it's not. There have only been 3 recorded specimens of this fish. It is called a Suni catfish, so S-U-N-I, and it was only discovered relatively recently, and it was discovered because this fish was so massive. They estimated to be about 300, 400 kilograms, so not far off 1,000 pounds. It was so big it got jammed in the turbines of one of the hydroelectric schemes on the Congo River, and that was the first one that has ever been described. But we will jump back and continue our river discussion. James has got some more feathered friends. At least he is finding something with a heartbeat. So we'll be back a little bit later.
Very kind of my friend Brent to congratulate me on finding something with a heartbeat. I think that's most amusing. So beautiful battaliers that we have here, a pair of battalier, and we had a question there just now about monogamy around those hornbills, and these are monogamous birds as well, and they live in a little stick nest when they've got babies. They don't now. Now what's interesting that I have found this pair around here many times. This is a road called Leadwood Road in the southeastern corner, around about where Brent had the Birmingham male lions yesterday, and I think that this is their territory, or certainly the center of it, and they probably will try and have a little clutch of chicks later this year around here. They're quite common in this area, but they are threatened. They don't live outside of protected areas, and they are aggressively territorial. Home range of between sort of 20 and 40 square kilometers, so that's about 2,000 to 4,000 hectares. So in theory, about the size of our traversing area. So these guys will have, the males certainly will have a fairly large traversing area. Quite astonishingly, they traverse. I mean, I'd be quite interested to know how far people thought battaliers would travel in a day. How far do you think a bird like this travels in one day, given that they can glide at between 50 and 80 kilometers per hour? So how far in miles or kilometers do you think a battalier is able to travel in a day? Quite interestingly, I've just read on my Little Bird app here that they are monogamous, but as I suspected, the pair bond persists between years but not necessarily for life. That's quite interesting. They are very beautiful birds indeed. And whether or not the monogamous pair will last throughout life has mainly got to do probably with certainly with death and in ill health. If one of them gets ill or has to leave or dies, then they probably will they'll find others. But sometimes I think often people think that they're in the same pair bond, but they may fly off. Maybe this food becomes scarce, and so they split up for a while. Maybe having a chick becomes impossible because of food scarcity. I don't think that they will necessarily not bond with another one. I don't know, Rondre, how close in on the back sides can you get?
Not awfully close.
Not awfully close. Okay, so we're sitting at about, I'd say, 40 meters from them. And the batelier, when it flies, has a very short tail. It used to be called the short-tailed eagle, and that's for a very good reason. And the sort of mechanics about it I won't go into right now, but basically it helps them to glide very low to the ground with a minimum of air resistance. But it's not easy to fly like that. And so the youngsters have got long tails because it's easier to fly with a long tail. And it takes 7 years for them to reach that beautiful adult plumage that you can see there. And each year that long tail becomes incrementally shorter until by the 7th year it's almost disappeared completely. And that's what these adults without those tails have got. They really are quite spectacular, stocky little eagles, these. And they survive throughout. I mean, some of our eagles go away and some of them stay for the summertime, at least for the wintertime. These guys stay because they are largely scavengers. So they do quite a lot of feeding on carrion, and that's one of the reasons they need to fly so low, so that they can get to the carcasses before the vultures do, have a quick bite to eat, and then fly off. Because they're much smaller than a great flock of white-backed squabbling vultures. Alright, I think we'll probably carry on a little bit from here, see what else we can see, and some quite nice information. I'm not sure if any of you managed to guess this, but they do fly up to 400 kilometers a day. That's a long way. That's probably about, what should we say, Jean-Andre? Probably about 240 miles in a day. That's quite a long way, I think. I couldn't do that. Right, on we go. As the Franklins start to call behind us. As Brent is probably lamenting, it does appear to be a little quiet on the mammal front on Djuma today, but that's just sometimes how it goes, especially after the magnificent day that we had yesterday. drive along and we enjoy the sort of warming of the air. Edward, you want to know about the temperature in summer. You say it's very hot. Well, it is. And you want to know about the humidity. Edward, it doesn't get that humid here. I mean, after a storm it will get a little bit humid, but not very bad. It's not like on the coast. And so the heat is much more easy to deal with than in a place, say, like Durban, which is on our east coast, where the humidity is much higher. And certainly, I mean, the hottest place I've ever been, or the place that felt the hottest, was Chennai in India. And Chennai is probably the similar temperature to here, but with humidity more than 100%. And that just makes it hellish. So the heat here is actually bearable because it's just not humid. While we were talking about roaring earlier, this is exactly where the Birmingham boys were roaring yesterday while the Matimbas were shouting from the deep south. And Terry and Santa Ana, you want to know, are they able to, I mean, do older males have deeper voices? No, I don't think they do, you know. Once they've developed into big adults, the voice is probably pretty much like some men are tenors and some men are basses. And it's just the structure of the vocal cords. So I don't think it's possible to tell the age from the call. I mean, well, they're very little, obviously. I mean, cubs have a wonderful little roar. And I've seen the pride of lions before roaring all together. And the females you can tell. If you listen carefully, you can tell the females are still pretty throaty and raw, but it's not quite as booming as the males. But the cubs then start to, they're making wow, wow, and it's hilarious to watch them while their mothers and fathers are bellowing out these huge bone crunching, sort of bone rattling calls, and the little cubs are going with a shouting away into the air. Wow, wow. It's very funny. Then you can tell the ages, but otherwise I think it's almost impossible. Once they're adults, it's almost impossible to tell the age from the sound of the roar. Also on lions, there was a wonderful documentary made recently called Brothers of Blood, and a lot of that footage actually came from rangers around this area. It was about a coalition of male lions called the Mapocho, and I'll tell you where they got their name from. Mapocho was a security company in the area renowned for their, shall we say, less than legal means of extracting information from people. And when these 5 lions arrived, it was actually 6 of them originally. When these 5 lions arrived in the Sabi Sands, they were quickly dubbed the Mapocho because they behaved like the Mapocho. They actually killed a few lionesses, totally bizarrely, and so it was very strange behavior from them. And Roseanne in New Zealand, lovely to hear from you. North or South Island, Roseanne? You want to know, basically, are there any cubs from the Mapocho left? And the Mapocho, I mean, the last of them died not too long ago. Yeah, we've got tracks of the Nkahumas from yesterday, lion tracks going out of the reserve, unfortunately. Roseanne, you want to know if there are any cubs left from them? Absolutely there are, certainly further south. Some of the, certainly not little cubs, but some of the lionesses and lions and the prides, the Tsalala pride and probably the Sparta pride, and maybe even the Styx. I'm not sure, maybe even the Styx will have been sired by that famous male coalition, the Mapocho. We've also been watching those Matimba males doing quite a lot of mating in the last little while, and well, certainly the older one, and he's been mating. Actually, he mated for about a week, a solid week of loving with one of the Styx females. And Donna, you want to know how long it's going to take basically before a cub pops out, and they are so delightful, lion cubs. They're my favorite little cubs. About 110 days, Donna. That tends to be the general gestation period, so just over 3 months. And they'll give birth down in a riverbed in a secluded area, and after 6 weeks they'll be introduced to the pride. So we probably wouldn't see them unless we were very lucky for the next, say, 9 weeks. Not 9 weeks, 3 months plus 6 weeks. However many weeks though. 18 weeks. Interesting postulation, and a lot of questions come about fathers and fatherhood, and a lot of them, I'm just going to pop up here, and then Isla in Texas, I'm going to answer your question about male lion fathering and their ability to protect their cubs. Let me just pop up here quickly, because it's worth a discussion, especially in the absence of, as Brent puts it, anything with a beating heart. So we'll have a look out from one of the best viewpoints here, and I'll answer your question. Normally we can see the mountains from here, but that is not the case today, alas, because there's too much haze and smoke. So we get lots of questions about fathering out here, and I think it's, again, I mentioned yesterday that we'd like to anthropomorphize animals a little bit and we like to think of families of animals, and we like to think of a secure sort of unit, because that's what makes us as human beings feel secure. And so there are often lots of questions about, would a father protect, we had one the other day about, would a bull elephant protect a youngster if another bull came and attacked it? Would it protect the herd? And this question from Isla in Texas is, would the Matimba perhaps be running to lure the Birmingham boys away from their cubs so that they would survive? Isla, I'd say I'm 95% sure that wouldn't be the case. You know, I just don't think it's in them. I don't think it's part of what they do. I think what they would far rather do is chase the Birmingham boys off completely. Remember, those cubs have to survive to a year before they'll be safe from new male lions in the area. So while I wouldn't like to say anything's impossible, I think it's highly unlikely that that's what they're trying to do. So Isla, I think they're running probably because they're scared, or because they're marking territory further to the east. I'm not sure. I think their territory does extend a bit to the east, and maybe they don't even know that the Birmingham guys are now on that kill. Certainly, and as we were discussing last night amongst ourselves, these lion pride, these territorial takeovers take time. They don't happen overnight, and so it'll be. I don't think the end game hasn't happened yet. So the Drakensberg should be visible from here, but very hazy day. You can't see. I can just see them sort of peeping out of the haze and smoke, but in the camera you won't be able to see it. It would be a wonderful sunset, but I'm afraid there's not going to be much of a sunset now. And the Drakensberg, of course, Brent was talking about rivers. The Drakensberg is the source of the South African rivers, catchment of all the big ones, and it stretches 1,000 kilometers down the escarpment of this magnificent country of ours, South Africa. The dawn chorus has quieted down quite a lot. The robins are still calling, thankfully. And we're going to just go off towards Biffle's Hook waterhole, see if we can't find anything coming down to drink. Then we'll see what else there is there. Keep your comments and questions coming. We're having some lovely discussion today in the absence of a huge number of animals. So here we go again. Right, on the theme of monogamy, we were talking about anthropomorphic questions. Brent has managed to find himself a monogamous antelope with a heartbeat, interestingly. So we'll pop across to him and I'll see you just a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. We've just found a little Steenbok male who's busy digging a hole. So it could be a couple of reasons. We're going to watch, see what he does. It looks like he actually is digging for bulbs of the grass species. And oh, there we go. Just heard another car going past us. So he's actually digging quite deep, and obviously with how dry it is at the moment, digging up bulbs from under the grass, so trying to get that little bit of extra moisture and nutrients, because Steenbok are one of the few species out here that is completely not water dependent. So they will drink if there's during the rainy season when there's ponds and stuff around, but they don't need to drink, and they occur in incredibly arid areas like the Kalahari Desert, and in very high numbers. So they are very, very good at living in dry places. But apart from only that, they're also one of the few monogamous antelopes around. And I know while you've been with James, you've been saying monogamous birds. So very interesting. Now we can have a look at one of our few monogamous antelope species here. And they live in a really, really small little territory of no more than 2 hectares, which is just, I think, about 4 acres or so. And when I saw him digging initially, I thought maybe he was burying some feces. So because they live in such a small area, they will bury their feces to try hide their presence from predators. But while he moves off, I'm quite interested to go have a closer look at what he was digging at, see if we can figure out what was going on there. I'm quite confident, just from what I saw him doing and eating, he's trying to dig out the bulbs on the grass, and I'm going to see if I can do the same to see what the bulbs look like and what he's been feeding on. Also, a quick update, the reason we are back in this area is we got a call that someone heard a leopard call very close to where we saw Shadow's tracks crossing. So while we're here, it's always good, we'll be listening to see if we can possibly pick up on it. It was apparently a very short sort of and we've heard her do that before when she's been calling Sindile. So maybe Shadow is on a hunting streak at the moment. And we can see exactly where that Steenbok is digging. It's actually quite a deep hole that it's like there. Is that good for you, Andrew? Okay, I'll just jump out. I think just go through the hole. Unfortunately, I can't walk through around the front of the vehicle because there's lots of thorns. So I'm going to have to duck out of sight quickly. So Andrew's going to go to the hole and I'll meet you there. So he's dug a very deep hole here, and definitely not a hole to hide his feces. So maybe he's been trying to dig up some of these grass species. Let's see if we can do the same. He's been using those sharp little hooves of his, and we noticed him dug. I don't think he dug this particular grass species that I'm digging here, which is, I'm not sure what it is. So you noticed him, we were a bit far away, but what he was doing, he was using that sharp bit of his hoof and digging, and then you can see him digging and flicking the sand out of the way. Now, this particular grass species does not have a bulb, so he definitely wasn't digging up this one. It is possible, let's have a look around, what other grass species are here. Also, at this time of year, sometimes very difficult to identify the grass species. This looks like it might be more, but I mean, if I have to dig that deep, I think I might be here for the rest of the drive. So we'll just try quickly. No bulb. So I can't see what he's dug, and I'm trying to have a look around, but it could even be a small bush species that he's dug up. And there might be a little tuber that we saw him chewing on there that'll have quite a lot of water in it. So really, really fascinating that's one of the ways these animals get their moisture, because they do live in very arid areas from time to time, and there is no water close by on top of this crest, so definitely no water within its territory. So he's not going to move out of his territory to look for water. So this is possibly one of the mechanisms that a Stenbok is utilizing to get water. Just going to keep quiet for a second, use our ears. I know it looks quite silly when I do this all the time, but it does really increase your hearing tenfold. And imagine our kudu with those big ears, how they're able to. Unfortunately, all I can hear is the wind in the trees. But again, I apologize for not, actually, no worries. Instead of going up, we'll go over. Oops, so there's it. There we go. Temperature's warming up quite nicely, but there's still quite a cool breeze, hence the fact that we haven't lost too many layers just yet, only the gloves so far.
Hello everybody, welcome back to windy weather. A further 10 or 12 heartbeats here, one of which belongs to the, what was referred to as a pajama donkey the other day by one of the cameramen. I think it was Andrew. Was it you, Andre? It was Andre. No, not a very nice thing to call a zebra. This zebra finds himself, though, in a multi-specific herd with a whole lot of impala, and that is purely because he wants to be safe. And the impala are exceptionally good at smelling, seeing, hearing and sensing any forms of danger, and so the zebra will hang around with them. And then, as they say, you don't have to be the fastest person in the pack, you only have to be faster than the slowest person. The zebra will be much quicker than these impala generally, and so should something nasty come along, probably one of the impala that will get taken. So very clever strategy from the zebra. Jean-Andre used the term symbiotic. I think it's more parasitic, to be honest, as they lurk around here. But they do tolerate each other completely, which is interesting. I mean, were one of us to try and walk into that herd, they would all disappear at very high speed. So they definitely know what's dangerous and what isn't. A second here. An alarm calling. There's an alarm calling from, you can probably hear, from a number of rattling testiculars just behind us. It probably is a snake or a mongoose or something like that. I doubt it's a large male lion. I suspect it's a mongoose. But I can't see anything. We are looking, but we can't see anything. going to back up, Chandra, if you don't mind, because the alarming is kind of spreading. Just see. Very angry rattling testicular. Tail up. But I don't see nothing. I'll just have a quick listen here. The alarm calling has stopped. And that beautiful mid-morning call of the chin spot batters. Right, let's carry on towards Buffels Hook down. See if anything is going on there. Past this parasitic zebra, it's impala friends. The young stallion, so he hasn't managed to take a herd of his own yet. That's why he's on his own with the impala. When he gets big enough, I mean, he looks pretty big, so I'm not sure why he hasn't managed to take a herd. Maybe he's a monk. When they do take a herd, it is quite a violent process. They will normally challenge a stallion, a big adult. If they beat him up, and they are vicious with their teeth, and they kick, obviously, exceptionally well. So they kick and bite each other and rear up, and it's a terrifying fight. And if he manages to beat up the male, he will normally take the male's daughters. But why am I using the dominant stallion? If he beats up the dominant stallion, he'll take that stallion's daughters with him. Sometimes the vanquished stallion's mares will stay with him, and sometimes they'll go off with the new stallion. But certainly his daughters will go off with the new stallion. So it's quite an interesting sort of social arrangement, and they're the only ones out here that have a sort of social structure like that. There's normally a stallion and 3 or 4 mares with their foals, and when they turn about a year old, when the young colts are about a year old, they're tossed out by their fathers, and they go and form little bachelor groups often, or in that case a single bachelor group with some impala, and the fillies will stay with the rest of the herd. I don't want to go down there. Plenty of tracks of civets and hyenas. So while we're driving along trying to find any kind of mammal life, interesting question from Joshua in Texas about what is the rare animal. Joshua, the answer would be, I mean, if we're talking about animals, the answer would be some of the birds that I've seen that have just pitched up here completely out of the blue. A a South African shell duck, for example, which isn't supposed to occur here at all, pitched up around here once, just north of us on Ngala. So you do get the odd vagrant bird, and that would be the rarest thing to see out here. In terms of mammals, the rarest mammals would be something like a serval, which are not common, and they're just very special to see. Wild dogs, while we see them relatively frequently, are also pretty rare to see, but I guess the serval would probably be one of the rarest that I've ever seen out here. Caracal also, similar sized cat but very differently built, looks a bit like a European lynx, and so that would be one of the rarest to see out here as well. Oh, look at this beautiful tree over here. Let's just have a quick look. While we look at this tree, I'll answer a question from Virginia in Kentucky. So there are two trees, Jean-Andre, on this termite mound here. You can decide which one I think is interesting. Which one do you think it is?
Left.
Yes, the one on the left. It's my favorite bushveld tree. Let me just pop out and have a look at it. Sorry, Jean-Andre, it was I nearly got myself shouted at there by going out the wrong side of the camera. So this is the low-felt milkberry, and it always struck me that were a hobbit to live around here, or perhaps a group of fairies, they might live in or around a termite mound where one of these beautiful trees lives. It's called Manilkara mochisa, or the low-felt milkberry. And while I'm walking along with this tree in a sort of classic walking stance towards the camera, a la documentary, the question from Virginia about the Birmingham boys and will they have any effect on our leopards? No, not any more than the other lions would. So all lions, if they find a leopard, the leopard is in trouble. And the leopard will normally climb up a tree and hide and try and get away from the lions. So they're not in especially more danger than they would be without the Birmingham boys. So no more danger from them than from the Matimbas or from the Nkuhuma pride or from the Styx pride. That's generally the same. And the reason for that is for competition. They don't kill leopards because they necessarily like to kill leopards, but it's for competition apparently, to try and reduce the amount of predator competition. All the predators will damage each other if they can. They will try and reduce any kind of predator competition. So yeah, no extra danger to the likes of Karula or Shadow or Sindile or the two males that knock about this area. Look, John, I'm going around the front of the car. You see that? Perfectly in picture all the time. I am learning. Slowly, but I am learning.
Hold on to him.
Thank you so much. That's all I want. A little bit of positive feedback now and again, instead of a constant barrage of abuse. Plug myself in again. So, as we continue to drive along, talking about the lions and the possible takeovers and the roaring and growling that they make, Dr. Devi, you're quite interested to know about... Oh, that's interesting. What is that? Jean, is that a hyena? Just pop it over there. Tracks.
Oh, tracks.
Yes. It is? No. Andre has confirmed hyena tracks. Dr. Debbie, you want to know what age a lion develops his adult roar at? Difficult to say. I mean, I think by a year they're starting to lose that kind of, you know, the voice box is getting quite a lot bigger, and I'd say by 2 years, two and a half years, they're almost at the adult roar. Or it does get a little stronger as they get older, so when they're 6 or so, it probably is at maximum volume. So as we head towards Buffelshoek Dam, Carol in New York, you want me to find you a weaver bird's nest. Carol, it's a very unkind question for you to, or request at this time of the year, given that weavers are not weaving right now. There is one weaver, however, who has a nest at Buffelshoek Dam. I wonder what kind of weaver is it?
Red weaver?
Red billed buffalo weaver. Yes, well done. Very good. Okay, and so I will find you your weaver's nest, Carol, at Buffelshoek Dam. But before we get there, let's pop across to Brent. I think he's hot on the trails of a herd of elephant, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Aha! Welcome back, everyone. Unfortunately, we had no luck in that area with shadow. So I did hear a report that there were some pachyderms or elephants in this area, and I've now found the tracks. And they're walking on the right-hand side of the road, going straight down the road. So we're going to try to follow them and see if we can catch up with the eddies. Bush that way. What I am going to do is I'm going to go a little bit further down, and then we're going to stop and listen to see if we can grab them. Going to keep quiet for a few seconds. See if we can hear an elephant feeding. Oh, Andrew, little bee eater. Okay. You see this one little terminal here? Oh, there he goes. Oh, not to worry, might come back. We'll continue to listen. Unfortunately, those tracks look like they are on the move, so they are heading down. Yeah, they are heading. We can just hear them in the distance, but they are quite far. I think our best chance is going to be to head towards quarantine clearings, and that's probably the next closest road. But in the meantime, I just spotted a very beautiful little bird. I'm going to try sneak, and I've also spotted some buffalo. So we'll get back to the buffalo now, but let's try stalk this little bee. We're just going to get you a safety shot from here, through the gap there. Incredibly beautiful, incredibly quick. So I'm going to test Andrew. There we go, testing Andrew to the limit. what is quite nice about them is they will often take off and land back in the exact same perch. They're obviously hawking for little insects, and there we go, back to the same perch. Now, the reason they're called bee eaters, and all of them often, well, when they catch a bee or a wasp or a stinging insect or even a big biting insect, they'll put that insect in their beaks and they will beat it into submission on a stick or on a branch that they're sitting on, so they are able to feed on it without it stinging them. So we have heard those elephants, as said, they sound quite far. This is quite a big block, but they seem to be heading possibly down towards those nice open areas around Quarantine. Maybe they're heading for a drink around Gallagher or Vuyatela. But there are some buffalo bulls that I spotted while we were listening. I just saw some ears flicking through the bush. Looks like quite a sizable group of buffalo bulls. And they're going to provide us with a traffic jam. Old boys. Oh, quite a lot of them. So we've got a nice group of Dugger boys here behind us, up on the crest, away from the low-lying areas. So obviously, at this time of year when it's cold, they'll move up to high ground where it's slightly warmer to spend the night, and I'm quite sure they'll then now move down to the drainage lines and around the water. Oh, lots of oxpeckers around with them as well. And they've just noticed us and they're alarming. Oh my goodness, Andrew's here, we've got to be careful. And all red bulls that I can see. Oh yes, it's still a bit cold to get going. These guys will wait for it to warm up nicely. I always love looking at buffalo, and oh, there's an oxpecker. I think he's going to get shooed off. It's going to get a bit irritating around the buffalo's eye. I always love looking at the buffalo bulls and just having a really close look at all their different bosses. And if we just take, oh no, that oxpecker is going to get a head shake shortly. There we go. Go away. Out of my eye, you. And we'll have a look at those horns and bosses and how each individual buffalo has a very distinct boss or that big thick area in the center of the horns. And you can see almost like different hairstyles. You can see there's some really old boys off to the left of the road, and you can see how worn their horns are, and those bosses have that wonderful gnarled effect. I'm just going to sneak forward a skosh. And we can have a look at those very old boys on the left hand side of the road, just over there. Sorry, old man. See, this guy's got wonderful worn bosses. And even with buffalo, like, oh, and lots of oxpeckers, but have a look at those wonderful worn bosses. And there's a bit of preening that goes into getting a boss like that, scratching it up against trees. And they quite often have favorites, and you can see that red coloration on the buffalo's boss there, which makes me tend to think that he's been rubbing his horns on either a guarri bush or a tamburti Oh, Andrew, if we go to the back, there's that buffalo with a blind eye. You see that guy there? It looks like his eye is completely blind. He's got a cataract over the whole eye. I doubt he can see even movement through that. I'm guessing it's probably around 20, 25 buffalo here. Let's have a look at these oxpeckers on this guy on the right here. There we go. You can see they're not really feeding yet. Sort of enjoying the warmth. So they've got a mobile breakfast buffet, and they're now just sort of enjoying the warm sun. And I mean, almost close enough to actually see the little combs on their beak that they use to comb through the. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at him giving himself a good clean. Oh, scratch it. Itchy ear. And then to the one on the left who's popping his head down every now and then. There's a juvenile that's starting to get its adult colors. You can see there's a little bit of red starting to form in the beak, and that very distinct bright yellow ring around the red eye. Oh, there's a popular buffalo from oxpeckers. And he's got a whole bunch on his back. They are actually really, really exquisite little birds. Well, old men, we're going to continue on. We've got some elephants to go try to find, but a nice little interlude with the buffaloes. So we're going to disappear and leave these buffalo lying up here on the crest, and I hear James has been reunited with his long lost soulmate, so let's go have a look who James has found.
Hello everybody, welcome to Biffle's Hook Waterhole, where I am extremely pleased to announce that I have been reunited with my friend, the great Bachelor of Biffle's Hook, with whom I have a certain amount of solidarity, us being two bachelors living here at Djuma. And thank you, Carol, for asking about him and sending through a screenshot. There he is. That's his back. I'm assuming, basically, that's Bob. It could be any other hippopotamus. It's very difficult to tell the difference between them. They don't have obvious spots like leopards, of course, but I think it's probably old Bob. And he's on his own, and he was quite badly injured in a fight before he disappeared. And I've been looking at his back for a little while now, and it seems to be okay, though. I don't think he's in too much distress. So I think it was Christine, actually, who asked about Bob. Thank you for that, Christine. He's a rather special fellow. And Gendre actually was trying to get me to swim across this dam. Gendre, in a box of bad ideas, that would definitely be the worst one. Hippopotamus, while they generally do look fairly docile and calm, are in fact very easily threatened, and if you were to dip into the water here, he would almost without doubt react in a manner that would result in severe injury or death. Right, so that's Bob. Now Carol, back to your question about the weavers. You'll be pleased to know that we have managed to find some weavers' nests. Indeed, more than one species of weaver's nest, just up over the back of my head here, and we'll have a quick look at them now. Now there are two species of weaver nests there, and as far as I can tell, the sort of hanging ones, if you go to one of those first, please, Jean-Ray, that is the spotted-backed weaver. Used to be known as the village weaver. I'm not sure why. They do like to live sort of around human habitation sometimes, but they look very similar to a number of the other yellow weavers, like the lesser masked weaver and the southern masked weaver. They have very similar kinds of nests, but the spotted-backed weaver tends to build his nest near water, and so that's why I'm pretty sure that that's what that is. And I'll find you a picture of the spotted-backed weaver. And then the other weaver's nests there, the big sort of scraggly sticks, are the red-billed buffalo weavers, as so cleverly picked up by our friend Jean-Ray. They're not around at the moment, and the weavers only build their nests come the summertime. They'll start to build fairly soon, but at the moment they're just foraging with the females, and they all look pretty much exactly the same at the moment. So if we look over here, Jean-Ray, we'll just have a quick look in the book. There is the village weaver, or spotted-backed weaver. You can see the spots on the spotted-backed weaver. See them, Jean-Ray?
Yes, yes.
And that male doesn't look like that during the winter time. He looks a bit like the female. In fact, he looks like that female there. They all look like that in the winter time, and then coming the summertime, they'll develop this beautiful yellow plumage. And that's the spotted-backed weaver there with a red eye. That's how he's told. And you can see very similar. I mean, if you saw them in flight, you'd hardly see the difference between them all. And we get all three here. Southern masked, lesser masked, and spotted-backed. We also get this beautiful thing called a red-headed weaver down at the bottom. And he also has a hanging nest, but it's very messy. It's a little bit like Brent Leo Smith might have made it. Right, so those are the weavers. Oh, you probably want to see a red-billed buffalo weaver. Hang on a second. Let me try and find the red-billed buffalo weaver's nest. There he is. That's the red-billed buffalo weaver there. Much larger bird. And they like to live in a sort of communal flock. Right, those are the weavers. Lots of them. I believe it's time to probably press on from old Biffle's Hook Dam here. And we'll leave Bob to himself, to his silent contemplation. And see what else we can find. And not a lot, I'm afraid, in the way of leopard or lion tracks today. In fact, any kind of large game track. But a very beautiful morning. With, as we were just saying, Jean-Ray and I, a slightly chilly breeze. I think probably pretty chilly on the high road today. Not warmed up quite like I thought it would. We did see some leopard tracks today, and I know Brent was stuff and we haven't seen them. Renee on Twitter, you want to know, do we have any updates on Tingana, who is a... Ooh, did you see the squirrel? remarkable. You got him there. So just while we look at that squirrel, beautiful. Remay, no updates I'm afraid on Tingana or the Anderson male. They haven't been seen around here for the last few days. That little squirrel is in a ziziphus tree or a buffalo thorn, full of really nasty thorns, and the nimbleness with which it's knocked around in there is amazing. There it goes, tearing across to a knobthorn, where I suspect it has a little hole to live in. There is a pair of them that lives in a knobthorn just not far from here, above the dam wall. I don't think that's where he's going there. Squirrel, of course, is a rodent, but tends to get a lot better press than the average rat, for example. No one thinks of a squirrel as being like a rat, possibly because they don't carry the bubonic plague. Well, not as far as I know. Here, I'm just warning you. So it does, I'm sorry in advance. We're not going towards Mala Road. An inquiry about weavers from Johannesburg, Empire Road, where I think it's probably cold. From Jimps, we want to know why the name of the weaver changed from the spotted backed to the village. Jimps, I don't know exactly, but for to say to you that it's probably known as the village weaver in other parts of Africa, possibly East Africa, where it wasn't known as the spotted backed. And it had a lot of the names changed about 15 years ago, when there needed to be some sort of merging of names between the East African version and the Southern African versions of the same species. But they do like to live around villages and around human habitation, so village weaver is not a bad name for it. Thank you for that, James. I hope that you are not shirking your work too much by watching us. We're going to pop across to Brent quickly. I think he's got something exciting to show you, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Welcome back. Unfortunately, there's elephants. We can hear them, but they're right in the middle of a drainage line where we can't get a vehicle. But as we've meandered onto the edge of quarantine, found one of my favorite little animals. I'm just going to try and call them out for everyone. So I'm just going to move forward a little bit. There's one just there, but they're on the sunny side of the termite mound, basking. Oh, there we go. There we go. Old dwarf mongoose. They're all coming to inspect us. These guys are a wonderful little, there we go. I know I've told you guys before, but in case there's some new viewers, I quite often like to play a game with you guys, and it's called the collective noun game. And we normally refer to the old Victorian collective nouns. So I'm going to say, who can remember what the collective noun is for mongoose? The original old Victorian collective noun for mongoose. You can send your answers to questions@WildEarthTV, or you can use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. So dwarf mongoose generally only get moving quite late in the morning once it's warm. So earlier in the morning, as the sun sort of pops up, they like to spend time basking in the sun, grooming and playing around the edge of normally a disused termite mound. That is their home. They'll have multiple of these within their small home range, and what they're doing, it's a very safe place. Being so small, you are quite a target for lots of different predators, but the biggest danger for mongoose is always death from above. So any of your birds of prey. Very, very alert little carnivore, and actually the smallest member of the carnivore family in Africa. Seems to be quite a few around the corner. I'm just going to ease forward a little bit to the sunny side of the termite mound. And they'll pop back into the hole, but I'm quite sure we can convince them to come talk to us. So Andrew, if you have a look at this hole to the left between the two bushes, you can see that's a spot that's used quite often, and that'll be one of the main entrances. So I'm going to see if we get a head pop up there. I don't see. Oh, there's one coming down with king of the castle position to inspect. Oh, there's a few more popping out now. Normally in sort of family groups of around 15 or 10 to 15, but sometimes in good areas much larger. There's only 2 species of dwarf mongoose in Africa. The one we get here in for the majority of Africa, it's this one. And then from northern Kenya up into Somalia, there's a Somali dwarf mongoose. Looks very similar, but the coloration's a bit different. Let's see how many we can count. Very busy little guys. Andrew, how many can you see?
About 6 at the moment.
Oh, you're not looking carefully. I'm on 12.
Yours.
So there we go, there's 2 there that, they do move a lot, which makes it a little bit more difficult. We've got those two that Andrew's looking up, one up to the right, to the other right.
Yes, that one.
Yes, is there. And above him, above those two in the open patch, there's another two sitting up there behind the bush. And then in the grass close to us, there's about 6 in this area there. So we had quite a few answers in. There was a gaggle, a pack, which are not correct, and Siberia, who's one of our Zoomies, and Georgian from Illinois got it correct. It is a business of mongoose. I could spend hours upon hours with these little guys. Absolutely fascinating. The social structure is sort of most similar, if we had to describe it, to one of the bigger animals we see, to African wild dog. So they'll have an alpha pair who does the breeding, and the rest are there to look after the little ones. And you'll have both male and female, if the business gets too big, will migrate, normally in a pair, and try find another 2 that have also migrated. So very similar to wild dog in that regards. And even though they are very little, they are extremely effective little hunters, mostly of invertebrates.
They can hear my voice again. You and Andre both check your
Well, we'll let them continue on their morning sort of business. Ha ha ha, so funny today. So we'll leave the mongoose business up to their business, and hopefully for them there's no risky business. Enough of the bad jokes. Let's continue on. I'm going to have a quick look down towards the Djuma dam, and those elephants still haven't come out of the block. We've been listening carefully behind us, but I think those of you who watch the dam cams religiously, I think there's a strong possibility that those ellies might move towards the Djuma dam at some point today. Still checking to see if we can get a long distance visual of them, but no luck so far. And they are miles away. I've spotted those elephant, or an elephant at least. Have you got it there, Andrew? I think I see more than one. Let me get my binos out. So they haven't quite got as far as I can see 2.
Where?
Bulls. So let me just have a look at them. Go to the right, Andrew, and go zoom up right at the top of the crest of the hill. And to the left, there's one there, and there's 2 there. So 2 bulls right there, and those are the ones we've been hearing, and they've changed their direction a little bit. And so they're literally right in the middle between the 2 roads where we've been looking for them. And you've got to get your... It's amazing, your eyes are like a they are a muscle, and the more you train them, the better you get at spotting things. And even though that looks like a near impossible spot at that distance, you just suddenly see something that doesn't quite look like it fits the shape of the trees, and oh, there's more coming through now. Here come the rest of the herd. So they've actually changed direction. We thought they were heading almost sort of northeast. They've gone northeast into that block, and now they are heading to the actual south. And it was quite a large block with no roads.
I don't know how you saw those.
That's what I was just explaining. It's your eyes are a muscle, so basically you just see something that the shape doesn't quite fit the normal sort of trees and bushes that you look at. And I mean, a lot of the time you start looking at bushes and trees and whatnot, and you think, oh, the lion, leopard, elephant, but eventually as your eyes get better and better at spotting things, you start to develop quick sort of reflexes that you could just sort of what they call general size, shape and impression, and with a quick glance you can say, boom, there's an elephant, boom, there's a leopard. Of course you do get it wrong quite often, but it's always worth double checking those, because one out of 10 times that termite mound will actually be a leopard or a lion. So while we're sitting here watching those elephants, they're probably how far from us? Andrew, what do you reckon?
600 meters?
I think I'd go a bit closer, 800 meters. Quite far. Remember, there's a dip between us as well. But we had some interesting questions. I know you guys have been discussing, and I've spoken to James about what's been his rarest sighting in the bush. And Ellies are disappearing. There's still a good chance they might move towards the Djuma Dam at some point today. But well, and Joshua from Texas is asking, what is my rarest sighting that I've had in the bush? Joshua, that is an incredibly difficult question. In terms of probably species, or the rarest species I've seen in the bush, and it would depend where as well. Let me think. So a lot of these things depend on where you are. So I know James mentioned serval in Caracal, but now if you're in the Kalahari or up in northern Botswana, you actually see them quite often. And fingers crossed, as it's going to be a really dry year this year, I think we're going to have more opportunities to possibly see some of these rare species as it gets really dry, especially towards October, which is my actually personal favorite month in the bush. It's the driest and warmest month in that combination. But trying to think, I've seen some particularly rare birds, African pitta being one of them. But from a mammal point of view, well, let's stick to the Sabi Sands for now. What is the rarest animal I have seen in the Sabi Sands? And that would probably have to be black rhino. It is definitely one of the rarest animals I've seen in the Sabi Sands. And what else? Sable, but that wasn't in the Sabi Sands, that was in the Manyeleti. So we go. Well, sables are very rare, and again, it depends where you are. If you're up in northern Zambia and parts of northern Botswana and Zimbabwe, sable are not that rare. They're actually quite a common species, and the same goes with roan. But in this area, they are incredibly rare. Where I worked in the Kruger National Park, we actually used to regularly see a herd of about 25, 30 sable. But I would probably go pangolin. It's one of the rarest things I've seen in the Sabi Sands, and that ties in with another question from Ginny from Carolina, who was asking, do we get pangolin in the Sabi Sands? And we do. We do get pangolin. I've been lucky enough to see quite a few. I've probably seen 5 or 6 in the Sabi Sands. So that's definitely one of the other really rare species. But if I move up further north, I've seen some funny little things in my wanderings, and one of them, or not so little, this one, is an animal called the Western Lowland Gorilla. And it's quite a rare animal that I've seen. Most people who have gone on gorilla safaris go to sort of Uganda, Rwanda, and that area, and you see the mountain gorillas. Although they are in number less than the Western Lowland, they're much easier to see. Almost all of them in that area are habituated and are followed on a daily basis. Whether it's Western Lowlands, they travel much bigger distances and are much harder to habituate. And I only know of one truly habituated troop of Western Lowland gorillas. Actually two, one in Congo and one in Gabon. So I've been lucky enough to see completely unhabituated Western Lowland gorillas in Luangwa National Park. And then in terms of rarity, I think one of the stranger animals I've seen, although they weren't rare where I was based in Tanzania, they are generally rare around there, is a wildebeest, believe it or not. It's called a Nyasa wildebeest, and it is a bit smaller than the normal wildebeest, and it's got a very, very interesting marking on its face. So those are endemic to southern Tanzania, northern Mozambique, and they are called Nyasa wildebeest. And if we have a look at a kudu or a nyala, you have those very distinct white chevrons across their nose, and this particular wildebeest species also has white chevrons across its nose. And I was hoping to find some wildebeest on quarantine, but no such luck. But it is fascinating. It depends where you go in Africa. I mean, you can even get a really rare zebra species, like gravy zebra, which occurs in northern Kenya. So there are very area-specific rarities that you can look for, and I think probably the biggest one on my list to see in the wild, or most importantly not in captivity, is an okapi and a Congo peacock. They live in the same area between the Cross River and the Congo River in the Democratic Republic of Congo, an incredibly difficult place to get to. Also bonobos live in that area, so very difficult place to get to, but one day I hope to be able to go on a mission in that area. And it is literally devoid of mammalian heartbeats out here today. We're sitting near the Djuma Dam, and there's not even an impala in sight. Oh, so as we draw, oopsie, now I'm hooked again. I'm very good at tangling wires and things. I seem to have developed a particular expertise for that. So just as we come towards the end of the show, we've got a really interesting comment about Sindile from Miss Jin in Texas, who says this is the birthday month of Sindile and he will be turning a year old this year. Isn't that amazing? He has grown up in front of our eyes here on Safari Live, and it has been a real privilege to stay with him while he's done that. I think the first time I saw him, he was probably about 3.5 or 4 months old. So really, really wonderful that he's getting to a year old now, and also really important in terms of sort of survival rates with leopard cubs. They have a very high mortality rate up to a year, and after that, past that year mark, it drops to almost zero, under sort of 10% mortality rate, and only gets very high again as they get sort of older than 12, 13 years old. So really great news about that. Thanks for letting us know, Miss Chin. Wonderful that Sindile is going to be a year old this month. Exciting stuff. But after that, thanks very much everyone for joining us on the Sunrise Safari. Been a little bit quiet and devoid of mammalian heartbeats, but still been thoroughly enjoyable having you with us, and really incredible behavior we got to watch with that steenbok, digging up tubers for moisture. So that's really something I have only ever seen once before in my life. So really, really nice to be able to see a really interesting behavior from those little antelope. So from Andrew and myself, we've had a thoroughly wonderful time with you. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the questions. We really do love being able to share our passion and knowledge about the African bushveld with you wherever you are in the world. And hopefully you will all be joining us this afternoon for the Sunset Safari, which will be Jamie and myself. So have a wonderful day, or morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you in a few hours for the Sunset Safari.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the beautiful Wendy. We're just sitting here with a little herd of impala. Just, John, sorry, can you look through there? Oh, I thought it was a baby giraffe. It's not, it's a kudu. Sorry about that. So we're just sitting here with a little herd of impala. Wonderful comment from Wendy in Nebraska, who says, despite the fact that we haven't seen a huge amount in the way of enormous, dangerous, clawed and horned animals today, she didn't use those words exactly, but something like that, she has been very kindly thanked us for the information we've given her, and mentioned that she has 13,000 screen grabs of the different animals that she's seen while she's been with Wild Earth and Safari Live. So thank you very much for that, Wendy. That is actually wonderful news, and it's very heartwarming to hear. So we've had an interesting morning, I think. Not a hugely productive one from the big animal point of view. And as Jean-Claude was saying to me as we were driving along, he said, why is it that everything disappears together? And I really couldn't tell you. Yesterday we had the two bunches of lions in the morning. We had herds of elephants, a couple of buffalo knocking about the place, lots of general game, plenty of birds, 2 leopards. In the afternoon, pretty much the same story. And then come the morning today, it's been chilly. We haven't had much in the way of big stuff, but really interesting little bits and pieces, and some wonderful contributions from all of you. So thank you for all of your contributions, for your questions and your comments. Thank you, Mr. Jean-André, for your efforts on the back of the camera there. Jean-André has been a little bit recalcitrant today, but I'm very pleased to tell you that, I don't know if you were with us yesterday afternoon, but Jean-André had some incomplete pants. He had a hole in his the inconvenient part of his shorts. That mercifully has been sorted out by the donning of some long winter pants, which has been a mercy certainly for me, if not for you. So thank you, Jean-André, for your efforts today. A big thank you to Brent Leo Smith, the irascible, on the other vehicle, with Andrew, I believe, who had a lovely day off yesterday. He's looking refreshed and well, rejuvenated as much as Andrew is capable of doing so. And then back in the control room to Nikki and Louise. Eugene is knocking about, as I say. Alex is on his way to Mother Russia, and Jamie's taking him into town. I can smell the gentle aroma of Manuel's breakfast cooking floating out over the woodland here, and so that's what we're going to go and do now and enjoy that. Thank you once again for all your questions and your contributions. You won't see me this afternoon unless there's some sort of a change. You'll be with Jamie and Brent. If not, I will see you this afternoon. If things go according to plan, I will see you probably tomorrow morning. So thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience as always, and I will see you later on. Enjoy the last little moments with these impala.